Well, look, I think this whole system of having an unelected Lords is getting pretty farcical. Do check out, by the way, heaver.news. I wrote about this today. You may remember the illegal migration bill that the government have championed as their solution to try and stop the boats. MPs have already backed it. 289 to 230 against was the vote. But of course, you've now got the Lords getting involved. And I have to say, in this particular case, as I said, I do think the situation is particularly farcical. What I think is disappointing is that Conservatives, with their majority given to them, of course, by the Brexiteer backing coalition of voters, could have been very radical, could have, for instance, pushed for a better system in Westminster, getting rid of unelected Lords, where, of course, you've got over 80 Lib Dem peers somehow, a party, of course, currently with less public support in national polls than the likes of Reform UK. And only 7%, that's the figure that YouGov have got, just 7% of the public now support a mostly appointed Lords. And by the way, when it comes to the electoral system, support for proportional representation is now far higher than for first past the post. But look, it's disappointing the Conservatives haven't gone for big reforms to Westminster, to the system post Brexit. And so you've got this situation now, and we've seen this time and time again in terms of opposition to the government's agenda, even after MPs, of course, have backed bills. You see here the bill described as being destroyed in the Lords. 20 defeats. I mean, I'm just laughing because to me that is just completely farcical. 20 defeats in the Lords on this bill, and now you've got this absurd situation, in my view, of this parliamentary ping pong, just slowing down the entire legislative procedure and making us a less well-governed country. I think this whole process is a complete waste of time. At the end of the day, you've just seen record high figures for a June in terms of crossings, a record June figure in terms of these crossings. You just want the government to be able to get on with it, with this plan, and then we can see if it's going to work or not. I suspect it won't. I suspect ultimately need to leave ECHR. But, you know, the Lords, 20 defeats there on this illegal migration bill. Brexiteer Claire Fox, who of course is in the Lords on this, was pretty insightful. Watch this and let me know what you make of this entire situation.
The Lords, in a way, have been very animated over the last couple of weeks, and you will have read about this because every time the illegal migration bill has been discussed in the Lords at report stage, which is when you push through amendments to a vote, the government have been heavily defeated by the Lords, who have effectively put in amendments that will scupper this bill. Now, I do not like the illegal migration bill per se. I don't think it will actually tackle the small boats question. I think it avoids lots of issues that Rishi Sunak wants to have a headline on but not actually resolve. There's lots of legal loopholes in it. However, I recognise that it is a popular piece of legislation and that I have to be very careful about simply just arguing against it. So my attitude to it has been that I have spoken a couple of times, particularly to draw attention to the fact that the members of the House of Lords are basically trying to say this bill can't pass. It can't pass, they say, because of all of the international agreements that it will breach. And my argument has been, you cannot tell the British people that they cannot do something on the basis of international agreements that were signed that are not fit for allowing democratic accountability to occur. That's just cheating and avoiding the issue. They're now, of course, absolutely delighted with themselves in the Lords because they are saying, oh, well, the High Court has now said it's illegal and therefore you cannot allow this bill to pass. They're not saying we're going to play the role of the House of Lords, which is already dubious, which is to scrutinise it, to hold it up to the light of public opinion, to show where there are problems legally with it, which is one job. They are effectively saying we're going to ensure it never gets through by making the amendments tear the heart out of what the government are at least trying to do in relation to stopping the illegal boats crossings and the fact that the term refugee has been bastardised in this present period. Everybody that I know anyway is sympathetic to people fleeing war and persecution and would be generous to a fault. But this is the abdication of responsibility for real refugees by basically lumping everybody in and saying that they've got to be considered refugees because, and there's been amendments to this effect, they're fleeing LGBTQ persecution in one country, or they're women and children in another instance, or in fact they are to be believed at all times that they are people who are fleeing for their lives. And of course, for the public, this is utterly frustrating. So my attitude to it has been, I don't like the bill, I don't think it works, so I'm not backing the government so much. And I am, however, infuriated by the opposition even worse. To give you an example, I went in because there was one amendment that I thought that the opposition might have got right. I was going in to hear the arguments, I listened to all the arguments, and by the end of it I was so furious that I voted with the government. I've been abstaining on a lot of the votes. I ended up voting with the government because the arguments for the amendment ended up effectively being, this government cannot do this because I don't trust the government, and I do trust the law courts, and judges are more trustworthy, and we are not going to let this happen. So I just thought, right, that's completely anti-democratic. I am not going to go along with it, and I voted with the government, so that didn't work.